upgrade your cartridge. It's a really great idea and is one of the most popular ways to improve your turntable sound. But as you can see, there are so many different brands and options out there. It can be a bit overwhelming sometimes to try and figure out what is the best way to go. So in this video, we want to discuss some of the different options to consider when choosing your next cartridge, and also some of the pitfalls to watch out for so that you don't make a mistake and you get the full performance and benefit that you want to achieve from your new cartridge. So why is a cartridge always something that people generally go to in regards to turntable upgrades? Well, it's actually a very, very sensible solution. Of course, where does your music come from? It comes from the vinyl. That is where the data is essentially. And what picks up that data? The cartridge. Therefore, if that's able to pick up that signal better signal equals better sound generally. Now that's obviously a very generic rule of thumb, and it is a lot more complicated than that, of course. But having a really high quality cartridge is going to be essential to getting a good sound from any turntable. So let's talk about some of the questions we always get asked. Probably the most important and one of the main things to consider when you're looking at a new cartridge is MM or MC, i.e. moving magnet or moving coil. Now, generally speaking, when someone goes to buy a new cartridge, particularly when they're upgrading, they always say, I guess I need to go to MC. Rule of thumb, yes, that is generally the way forward. You will see most of the high-end cartridges are all an MC design. An MC is generally regarded as the much higher class and better way of doing it when you get into more high-end systems. However, depending on your budget, depending on other aspects, MM may well actually be a better route for you. And what we mean by that is, generally speaking, it comes down to your budget, but also down to your other components. So when we say budget, what we mean is there is moving coils pretty much from any price range, normally from around £250 upwards. Now, these are great cartridges. They're by no means, they don't underperform. They are fantastic cartridges from fantastic brands. But there are also MMs that go up right up to £1,000, say for example, that are spectacular. Things like the Ortofon 2M Black. It is an MM design, but at £1,000 it is possibly and arguably one of the best cartridges on the market. And obviously that slightly goes against the rule of MC is better, but in that particular price range and for particular people with particular systems, that 2M Black as an example is actually a much better way to go. And that actually kind of brings me on to my second point, the compatibility with the rest of your system. And the reason I say that the 2M Black, for example, may be a better example is because maybe you don't have a phono stage that is capable of dealing with a proper MC cartridge, or maybe justifying an MC cartridge. Because when you look at a new cartridge, you need to consider what is coming after the cartridge, i.e. the quality of your turntable, the quality of your phono stage, and even to regard your amplifier and speakers. But the key thing I would focus on is your turntable and your phono stage. Now, there will be a huge debate, of course, and there is lots and lots of ideas out there. But obviously putting in a ludicrously expensive cartridge on a turntable that is a fraction of the price doesn't really make sense, because the turntable is not really prepared to deal with the cartridge at that level. And similarly, it's exactly the same with a phono stage. If your phono stage is not capable of using an MC, then obviously that needs changed. But obviously a lot of phono stages now are MM and MC compatible. But if it's not really at the same quality as your cartridge, you're never really going to see the benefit. And ultimately making these upgrades is all about getting the absolute best sound quality and best upgrade within your budget. So in some cases, for example, rather than spending £2,000 on a new cartridge and saying that's going to make an enormous difference, which is often the thought train, and it's understandable because, of course, put a better product on, it's going to sound better. It does make sense. But in reality, actually splitting that budget up just a little bit is going to give you a better sound. Say for example spending £1,000 on a cartridge and then using £1,000 to upgrade your phono stage is going to give you an overall much better sound. There is this, and I guess a story you could say that someone told me which I think explains it very well. They say for example it's like going on holiday and you spend all of your holiday budget buying a business class, first class plane ticket. Yes, the business class part is fantastic, but then you get to your destination and you're sitting in a really terrible hotel with no money to spend for the rest of the holiday. But for example, if you go back and you split your budget up and you buy a more basic plane ticket, you get a better hotel and have more spending money on your holiday. And it's about trying to make sure that the whole system has the correct synergy. And synergy is a word we use a lot here because synergy is going to give you the best sound. So it's about having a cartridge that is going to help your phono stage. Having a phono stage is going to help your amp. Having an amp is going to help your speakers, etc. So it is worth actually considering possibly whether or not an MM is actually a better route for you, even though MC is considered to be the better option. In some cases, an MM in the right setup with the right configuration is a much better system. And in other cases, potentially getting an MC cartridge is the right way to go, but maybe you need to think about other aspects of your system like the phono stage, like the turntable. So it's about trying to create a system that works rather than just saying I have very impressive parts in my system is always the advice we give. I mean, to be honest, as a rule of thumb, for example, we would say you need to spend probably twice as much on your phono stage as you do in your cartridge, because ultimately there is no point in having a cartridge that is fantastic for it then to go to an inferior phono stage that ultimately cannot justify it. Whereas having a phono stage that can process the signal obviously that the cartridge is giving it is going to help your system tenfold. And it also therefore means you can upgrade your cartridge without really worrying about how much better your phono stage needs to be because it's at that level. The other thing to consider as well is setup, because MC will require a little bit more setup and adjustability than say for example MM. These are things like impedances, and all of this needs to be set up in your phono stage to get the right sound. Now, most cartridges of course come with instructions and they do give you a guide of how to set it up and what those settings need to be in your phono stage. But of course, depending on your experience and your knowledge, setting up phono stages in some cases is super easy. Things like the Go No page 10 or page 5 is all touchscreen and can be done from the front screen, and it is literally takes seconds to change those settings. In other cases, some phono stages need to be dismantled to get into the circuitry to flick some dip switches in order to actually get the settings changed. That then becomes more complicated. Again, like items like the Go Note are perfect because you can actually do them on the fly and change them on the fly and hear the differences until you find one that you like. Because like everything, there is obviously a guide that comes with the cartridge, and generally those guides are pretty much bang on. But from time to time and occasionally there is sometimes you want to change those settings, and sometimes you prefer the sound. And that could be down to your room, it could be down to your system, it could be down to your personal preferences. So there's no wrong way as such, as long as you like the sound you're getting. But of course, as a dealer, we're always here to help set up that phono stage. We're here to help you make sure you get the sound that you want. And again, ultimately as a dealer, we don't want to sell you a cartridge that is extremely expensive, because ultimately if we do that and your phono stage and the rest of your system can't justify it, it's not going to benefit you, and therefore you're not going to hear that improvement. And this is one of the reasons we have won so many awards in our time, is because we give customers that true and honest advice that helps them build their system in the best way possible. And even, it sounds kind of crazy, but sometimes customers end up spending less than they anticipated because we have found ways and means to do that. And cartridges is a prime example where this happens often, because often we've actually ended up getting customers a cheaper cartridge, maybe ending up changing their phono stage and putting a package together that actually worked out maybe slightly cheaper than their budget, but they are saying the sound is miles better and even more of an improvement than they expected. And it sounds a bit self-destructive from our point of view, but ultimately our aim is to get you guys the best sound, and that is why we have won so many awards, and even on a global level, because we want to get the best sound possible. We want you to be able to build systems that help you see that improvement every single time, and every time you make an upgrade is making better and better and better. And the one thing we always try to avoid is customers having to make a mistake, which is why we always like to give advice, because generally, not because we're more intelligent or anything like that, but we have more experience because we can hear all these products. We've been fully trained by the brands, so we know what works and what won't, what works in certain rooms and what won't. So when you come to us and say, I want to put, for example, this cartridge on this turntable with this phono stage, we can almost immediately go, no, that won't work, and this is why, but here is another option. And in some cases, customers maybe would go and buy that cartridge just because it's got a great review, for example, but ultimately it doesn't have the synergy, and that's what we always aim to try and avoid. We want to make sure that you get the best sound physically possible, and that sound, as I say, has led us to 4 awards in this year alone. We do pride ourselves in getting the perfect sound, and turntables is one of those things, because we are able to build that synergy between the cartridge to the turntable to the phono stage and beyond. So those are some of the really key points to consider if you are looking at a new cartridge upgrade. Consider whether you want to look at MM or MC, consider your budget, and consider the rest of your system. And in that way, you should be able to narrow down what may be the best possible way. And of course, we are always on hand if you're having any concerns or you're not quite sure what the best way to go is. If you want to know if your phono stage is up to it, please always ask, and we're happy to say if whether we feel that it is a good enough phono stage to deal with that cartridge that you've looked at. If you're not sure whether MM or MC is the right way to go, again, please always feel free to ask, and we're always happy to help and advise. But I hope this video has given you a very quick guide into some of the things to consider when you're looking for your new cartridge. And obviously we are always around to help, and all of our contact details are available on our website. If you want to get in touch, we're always happy to chat at length and give you all the time you need to try and make that perfect upgrade. So again, thank you guys so much for the video. I hope it has helped in some way, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.